The Broncos, and I take no pleasure in this. I mean, I speak as one whose beloved franchise has made a million terrible moves in my lifetime. They deserve to suck for having done this, because what they've done is organizational malpractice. This is like a breach of their fiduciary responsibility. When you go as all in on Russell Wilson as they did, then you have a responsibility to have done your homework, to be prepared for everything that it brings, and to do what it takes to make it work. You got to freaking go to the end of the earth for that thing not to work. For them to be trying to reset 1 year after making that move by hiring Sean Payton, who clearly had no interest in rehabilitating Russell Wilson, because at his best days, Russell Wilson wasn't running the offense that Sean Payton wants to run effectively. So what you basically did was you went out and you acquired Russell Wilson, and then you said, but wait a minute, he's difficult, he's a prima donna, he is unto himself, he's not a great guy for team culture. Wow, if only every player on the Seahawks had been saying that in front of every microphone they could find for the last 10 years. The whole world knew this. So you had to go into it knowing that and being prepared for it. Instead, they hired a coach who obviously couldn't coach at all, and because they thought it was going to get him Aaron Rodgers. Now you got Nathaniel Hackett. They got no plan. They bring in him. They trade everything in the world away. And then when it doesn't work out well, they decide, well, I guess that didn't work. Let's throw $1 trillion at the next shiny new toy that comes down the pike, which is Sean Payton, and let him tell us, you know what, you got to give up on that. Got to just throw that out. All the stuff you gave up, all the organizational assets, everything else you just gave up, and all that money, you got to walk away from that right now instead of trying to rehabilitate it. Russell Wilson may not be great. He isn't this bad. He's not bad enough to absolutely tank your franchise. They screwed this up. And incredibly, in a league where people get fired for everything, the person who engineered all of these moves is still in his position. That's the one guy who they don't seem to get rid of no matter what else happens. I'm not sitting here calling for anybody's job, but it just happens to be the reality of the situation. So this is organizational malpractice to the 1 millionth degree. And it will set their franchise back forever, because it should. When you make mistakes this bad and compound them the way they have, you deserve what's about to happen.
No question about it. It is an organizational failure. But what I can't square is the fact that Russell Wilson was not terrible last year at playing quarterback. He was merely average. What the Broncos effectively did was decide, we would rather pay you $85 million over the next 2 years to play for someone else or no one else than endure your presence. This reminds me a lot of something I lived with Carson Wentz. I'm an Eagles fan, and I saw in 2020 Carson Wentz effectively forget how to play football. But no one in the national media decided that it was his fault. They decided it was everyone else's fault. And so the Indianapolis Colts seemed to agree with that. So they traded a first-round pick for Carson Wentz. He then played average football in Indianapolis, and they could not get rid of him fast enough. Jim Irsay hated that guy. I see a lot of similarities between Russell Wilson and Carson Wentz, which is to say the performance bar that they have to clear is so much higher because it seems that everyone else in their orbit just comes to resent everything that they represent.
There is another explanation on Wilson. You're not wrong, and neither one of us knows which is right. But I don't think Sean Payton wanted Russell Wilson if he was who's the best glue guy there is, Nick Foles. If he was Nick Foles, who everybody loves to this day, that's not who Sean Payton wants to be his quarterback. So the minute you hired Sean Payton, look, no one knows this stuff better than you do. You study what teams' tendencies are and what offense they run. Russell Wilson never did any of what Drew Brees did well.
The only thing he did well was also be 5'11".
Also be short. That's it. There were two good short quarterbacks, and someone said, well, it worked with one of them. It's got to work with the other.
Then why hire Sean Payton?
Because they don't know what they're doing.
Then why did he take the job?
Because he knew he could get rid of that guy and buy himself as much as a carte blanche, because that's A. B, the world wasn't knocking down his door the way we all expected it to. There were a lot of jobs he wanted he didn't get. He wanted the Charger job. He could have waited that one out a year. He wanted a lot of other jobs. They didn't want him. The world didn't want Sean Payton, not at the ticket that he wanted. He needed someone to be willing to pay him all that Walmart money, and Walmart happened to have it. And I don't think Sean Payton was as sought after as he expected to be, or a lot of us perceived him to be. And he clearly either sold them a bill of goods or told them directly up front, I'll take this job, but I'm telling you right now, Russell Wilson's not going to be our quarterback when we start winning.
Well, to answer the question that you asked Nuno 5 minutes ago, did they just perform the worst transaction in the history of pro football?
If it's not, it's got to be close. I mean, how could it not be right up there? It's devastating. I think the world perceives Bill Belichick to be staring over Brian Daboll's shoulder. I have no idea how true that is. I don't know John Mara at all. So, I know him to say hello to. But my point is, my perception is that Mara and Belichick have maintained a very close relationship built on, among other things, a great deal of mutual respect over the years, and that Belichick, in his heart of hearts, would love to finish his career as the coach of the Giants, and that Mara would be very open to that. And he's the one who makes these decisions. So I think if that is true, then I think there is a level of urgency right now, if you're Brian Daboll and the people and even Joe Schoen, because if Belichick comes, Belichick is ultimately going to be the person in charge, no matter what. So if you're urgent, do you want to draft J.J. McCarthy and start developing a young guy, or do you want to bring in a guy who could probably run the offense you've been running at least as well as the guy you built it for? Look, I know Daniel Jones drafted 6th, and Justin, I believe, was drafted 11th.
That sounds right.
But the college careers of Justin Fields and Daniel Jones do not compare to each other, right? Justin Fields had one of the great college careers you'll ever see. He was an unbelievable player in college. His ceiling is 100. His ceiling is so much higher than Daniel Jones's ceiling that you can't even see it. So Daniel Jones could be, if everything goes right and he's coached up really well, could be an effective player. Justin Fields, if everything goes right, I think could be a great player. So that's a big difference.
So the Giants pick at 6, 39, 47, and 70. Just in terms of what they might be able to trade. Regardless of what you think of Daniel Jones as a player, what can be said for certain is that he is highly unreliable. In 5 seasons in the NFL, he has played one full one, and he has had a variety of injuries, including neck injuries and a torn ACL. All right, his playing style and his track record say that he's not likely to stay on the field. So if nothing else, Justin Fields would provide you really, really attractive Daniel Jones insurance and very likely an upgrade at the quarterback position, because Justin Fields, let's be honest, does have a fairly similar skill set to Josh Allen when he came into the league, whom Brian Daboll turned into an all-pro caliber player in his 3rd season.
He's not going to cost you that much money. Look, Saquon Barkley, at this stage of his life and this moment in time, I think has to know he's not getting paid huge money. That's not what's out there. So whatever it is anyone's going to pay him, the Cowboys should be willing to pay him. I wouldn't pay Micah Parsons now. No way. You can pick up his 5th-year option. You have 2 more years of Micah Parsons. What are we in a hurry for?
Fair enough. I hear you on Parsons.
And Dak is going to redo
though I
his
disagree.
deal.
So Dak
is going to redo his deal and make it however cap-friendly it needs to be.
How about CeeDee Lamb? You're going to keep going year to year with him too?
No, CeeDee Lamb is 1 year ahead of that, right?
Yes, so he's 1 year ahead.
He's closer. He's
closer.
He has played 4 years.
Drafted in 2020, yes.
So, do his deal at market level, whatever the top guys are getting.
And then what do you do about that defense that keeps getting gutted in the playoffs?
I don't know. If that defense there was a moment in time at the beginning of last season where we thought that defense, we were talking about it being one of the great defenses of all time. Now, I'm old enough to remember that conversation. So Trayvon Diggs got hurt. Jonathan Hankins got hurt. They had a bunch of other factors. They can go out and get pieces to make that defense a lot better that aren't costing you a fortune. You don't have to spend on free agent defenders that are going to be first-day free agent signings. You go out and you get yourself a couple of decent players, because they have great ones on that defense already. And where do they pick?
You're starting to warm me up to the logic a little bit, Bubba.
The Cowboys picked 24th on this. I'm looking here. They have Troy Fatanu, who is an offensive lineman from Washington, who I like a lot, actually. That's who Jordan Reed is mocking them. here in round 1, and then let me see what he's got for them in round 2, because you could certainly address some defensive needs there. The Cowboys, who have drafted very well.
Yeah, they have. They pick at 56.
They actually have him taking a running back, Trey Benson from Florida State, who I've not done yet, so I can't tell you much about.
But he'd
Trey
be
Benson.
cheap there.
He'd be a lot cheaper than
there.
Saquon.